2020, the big 2020. What was supposed to be an exciting start to a new decade ended up with people quarantined in their homes for weeks, unable to normally enjoy the year. No amusement parks, no international vacations, no sitting around in barely sanitary movie theaters, no breathing down each other's necks as we wait to play barely functional game demos. No fun outside the home. Thank goodness video games were there to keep us from going completely insane. Nintendo's 2020 has been less than ideal, with the pandemic creating a delay in the development process of many upcoming titles. But if I could use two words to describe Nintendo's 2020, they would be quiet surprise. For most of the abnormal year, Nintendo remained silent, avoiding releasing a traditional Nintendo Direct. Not even an E3 presentation filled with hype-inducing reveals. When they did break their silence, however, they revealed small yet surprising titles that made 2020 a good year for the Switch, especially with the juggernaut Animal Crossing fueling the console with new fans week after week. Granted, these sudden sparks of games were sporadic, nearly impossible to predict, and not on the same level as, say, Breath of the Wild or Super Mario Odyssey. Still, the Switch had a plethora of games and updates, both big and small. DLC, new campaigns, HD remakes, Wii U ports, localizing a retro Japanese exclusive, somebody's college senior thesis, and other experimental projects, along with a handful of new releases. Despite the unforeseen conditions that shook the world, Nintendo managed to pull off a decent year for the Switch, obviously with some help. After looking back on 2020, I've decided upon my top 6 Switch games of the year. While my number 1 game wasn't too hard to figure out, the games before it turned out to be difficult to place, as I think many of them are equally fun. Before I begin, let me say one tiny little caveat. My general rule for Game of the Year is something that I had never played before that also released this year. Most channels and outlets don't include ports and remakes, but I like to include ports that I play for the first time, especially with the Switch gaining nearly the entire Wii U library. With that out of the way, here are my top 6 Switch games of the year.
There was something strange. It was as if I could see into the future.
Already, I'm breaking my own rule. Wow, what a great start. But let me explain. If you're familiar with the channel, you'll know about my undying love for Xenoblade Chronicles. I consider it a masterpiece in storytelling, exploration, and gameplay. My favorite game of all time. Obviously, I've played the game before, but Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition walks that ever so thin line between remaster and remake, having enough on the remake side for me to justify putting it in my top 6. It would have easily taken my 2020 Game of the Year had I played it for the first time this year. However, since this is the definitive edition of a beloved masterpiece, I didn't think it would be fair to the other games released in 2020. Not to say the other 5 games on this list aren't special in their own way, but they can't beat the best version of a modern-day masterpiece, at least in my book. At the same time, I don't think I can comfortably ignore this fantastic remake, especially after falling in love with the game all over again. Thus, it sits at number 6 on my list. What surprised me the most about the HD remake is how much the little improvements improved the overall package. From combat to exploration, the remake made the Xenoblade adventure more convenient and easier for new fans to dive right in. In particular, the new quest system streamlined the massive amount of side quests spread across the Bionis, making it much easier to track who or what you need to find and where you need to go. A less surprising but much needed improvement is the HD upgrade to the environments and models. The original Xenoblade was an ambitiously gorgeous project that struggled to reach its full potential on the underpowered Wii console. With the HD remake, however, the world of the Bionis and Mechonis is brought to life in the way Monolith Soft originally intended. Exploring the bodies of titans, taking in the uniquely beautiful sights, is part of what makes Xenoblade a fantastic and impactful adventure. Being able to enjoy this world in HD is literally a dream come true for me. That's not to say Xenoblade runs perfectly on the Switch. The Definitive Edition is still a bit ambitious for Nintendo's latest hardware, especially in handheld mode. But despite some minor shortcomings in performance, the Switch version is still the best way to play this masterpiece, and one of the most visually appealing games in the Switch's library. Of course, the star of the definitive edition is the new art style for the cast, going from a less conventional style to a more mainstream look, while also retaining their original design. Everybody shows more emotion than they ever did in the first game, and the new style is much easier on the eyes, let's be honest. I'm not saying the old style is terrible, but I'd take HD Fiora over OG Fiora any day. Speaking of Fiora, she is best waifu. The battle is over. The war is won. Fiora is best girl. I was on the Melia ship when I first finished the original, but after reliving the story and seeing the love between Shulk and Fiora blossom, I'm sipping for Fiora now, guys. Traitor! How dare you disrespect her? You were never a true Melia fan! Maybe I wasn't. Maybe I was a pretender all along. But I will always love Melia's growth as she gains more and more confidence in her abilities. I think Shulk Melia ship could be a thing, but Fiora's HD glow-up proved too powerful. Melia does, however, get more of a chance to shine in the epilogue campaign Future Connected, a DLC-like expansion Monolith Soft added to sweeten the definitive edition deal. The new adventure adds a bit more to the main game's story, but primarily focuses on Melia and the future of her people. It's a good mini-consolidated adventure that takes some of the best moments of Xenoblade and stuffs it into one area. Exploration is gorgeous, cast bonding is wholesome, combat entertaining once you get your posse of Nopon, and the music some of the most jamming tracks to grace our earbuds since the 70s. Let's go! Even the software runs better in Future Connected than it does in the main campaign, or at least looked more polished and smoother at times. Yet, unlike Xenoblade Chronicles 2's DLC expansion, Torn of the Golden Country, Future Connected doesn't carry the same weight narratively as the main game. No, I'm not talking about tone, but the complexity and depth is just not on equal terms. The plot is fairly basic and doesn't do much to expand on the series' universe, unless you are a Xenoblade YouTuber who makes 10-minute videos about every single frame. In terms of cast, I think the Nopon in general are my favorite addition. Kino and Nene are precious furballs with wholesome dreams and aspirations. Their adorable dialogue throughout the journey stole my attention most of the time. Even the Nopon explorers you meet along the way are hilariously quirky and charming. I highly recommend finding them all. You won't regret it. The star Melia does grow significantly as she attempts to understand her role in a world changed by events 1 year earlier. Although simple, the story does a good job at showing Melia's progression and growth with her people. For fans looking for more reasons to love the girl formerly known as Best, Future Connected is a nice dessert to finish off a large meal. And then there's Shulk. He's just kind of there, enjoying the sights. Probably needed some time away from Fiora or something. Last thing I'll say about the remake, I implore you to at least try this masterpiece JRPG. If you have avoided playing Shulk's adventure, do it as soon as possible. The longer you wait, the more likely some major story developments will be spoiled. If there's one story or gameplay moments that should never be spoiled, it is Xenoblade Chronicles. Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door is a fond memory from my childhood. My very personality was shaped by this pinnacle of gaming, and you could even say I became the person I am today because of this masterpiece. It raised me, protected me, made me feel like I mattered. I would die for Thousand-Year Door. Hopefully that was enough simping, so now I can get away with praising Origami King. It's no secret that recent Paper Mario games have failed to capture the same charm and allure of its predecessors for many, many vocal gamers. I myself felt similarly, albeit not as passionately. Paper Mario used to have a solid combat system, clever writing, and an interesting narrative, but the previous two titles were a bit lackluster in that regard. Enter the Origami King, a rumored return to form for the Paper Mario series. Companions, new combat system, explorable overworld, good writing. Could it possibly be a good game? Well, it's on the list, so in my book, yes. I made a review video last year for Origami King, so be sure to check that out if you want my full thoughts. But in summary, Origami King borrows from both old and new Paper Mario to create a new turning point for the series. Honestly, it's the newfound creativity that really won me over, both in writing and level design. While Origami King is not winning awards for its narrative direction, the character progression and story surpasses the past two games by a mile. Olivia, the new Navi-like character, creates a believable little sister relationship with Mario as they explore the Mushroom Kingdom, allowing the player to actually care for her story. Her cute naivety and curiosity, as well as her hilarious jabs, easily make her one of the best partner characters in the series. Aside from Olivia, Origami King has multiple partner characters, a return feature from previous Paper Mario games, each with their own personality and life goals. However, they are also restricted by Paper Mario's recently strict rules, in that, aside from mainstay characters, the partners keep their basic NPC designs, with some not even given a distinct name. In that sense, it's a far cry from the colorful cast found in the first two games in the series. Yet, despite that limitation, a couple of Origami King partners do stand out enough to make their inclusion in the story worthwhile. One partner in particular made a lasting impression on me. If you played Origami King, you know exactly who I'm talking about. Level design is also a refreshing change for the series. The areas you explore are filled with creativity and new ideas for the series, from a Shogun theme park to a heavenly hot spring. Returning to overworld exploration breathed new life to the Paper Mushroom Kingdom, transitioning seamlessly to each area. It might seem like a minor change, but it helps build immersion and arguably makes the world more memorable. Part of the charm comes from the gorgeous art style and jamming music. It's impressive to see how far Intelligent Systems can take the paper theme with this series. Origami King takes it a step further with origami, creating enemies and even buildings with the paper folding technique. That, on top of the HD paper style and design, make it one of the most visually impressive games on the Switch. Not to be beat out by the visuals, the OST is simply outstanding. The battle music is jamming, the overworld music adventurous, and the somber moments emotional. I know it's not uncommon for Paper Mario games to have a good OST, or I guess even most Nintendo games in general, but the Origami King OST hit a special place in my heart. Combat, on the other hand, once again remains an issue. I appreciated the new type of puzzle combat they went for, and had a lot of fun with it towards the beginning and even till the end, especially against the bosses, but the novelty became stagnant as I progressed through the story. Sure, some puzzles gave me a good challenge and had me scratching my head, but I got a bit tired of the system when it was all said and done. I did find combat more enjoyable than Color Splash's sometimes boring take with cards and paintings, so it's a step in the right direction, at least. Is Paper Mario back to its glory days? No, not exactly, and I don't think it will be. The development team clearly has a new vision for the series, one they believe is a lower barrier of entry for players. However, the Origami King shows that the Paper Mario team is listening to fans, trying to compensate their vision with fan expectations. It's possible the next game in the series will further bridge that gap between old and new Paper Mario. But at the very least, Origami King is a very good step in the right direction. Idol culture scares me. Or at least it did until I fell into an anime binging rabbit hole while in college. Now I've grown somewhat accustomed to its otherworldly aura. But even now, the culture of Japanese pop idols sends an uncomfortable chill through my body whenever I come close, like the effects of a radiating chemical. If that's your jam, by all means, enjoy your favorite idol. As for me, I'll keep my distance from the cute radiation. 6 feet apart, please. 6 feet. Now that you understand that, can you blame me for avoiding Tokyo Mirage Session Sharp FE on the Wii U? Granted, there were other factors, like how stupidly long that name is, but I would be lying if I said the pop idol aspect didn't push me away a little. However, my interest was piqued after friends recommended the game, and as my love for Fire Emblem grew. It just wasn't enough to dig out my Wii U from its grave, you know? Thankfully, Atlas ported the crossover to the Switch, giving me the perfect opportunity I was looking for. For those unfamiliar, Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE Encore is a crossover project between Fire Emblem and the Shin Megami Tensei series. Although based on my own experiences, I'd say the crossover matches more of the feel and vibe of the Persona series, but Shin Megami Tensei is the parent series, so I'll let it slide. Set in modern-day Shibuya, Tokyo Mirage Sessions explores the sometimes not-so-glamorous life of a group of teen idols, as the cast learns more about themselves and overcomes their internal struggles to become the best Nintendo performers since the Squid Sisters. Behind the idle scenes, evil forces from another dimension, aka Fire Emblem, are taking the life force from unsuspecting individuals. This force, called Performa, you get it? Performa? Persona? It's clever. Is what fuels humans to pursue their dreams and perform in whatever talents they possess. To stop the bad guys from draining all the Performa in Tokyo and save their home, heroes from the Fire Emblem dimension ally with the main cast, becoming their personal Mirages. Yare yare daze. With the power of song, dance, acting, and cheese, they try to save the world. If hearing this description made you throw up a little in your mouth, don't worry, it's not as nearly as bad as it sounds. Actually, it's surprisingly enjoyable. From the funny writing to the action-packed combat, Tokyo Mirage Sessions has just enough to keep you entertained and engrossed in your new life as a pop idol. By far, the best part of the crossover is the cast. Lovable and charming, the clients of Fortuna Entertainment are some of the best waifus and husbandos you can find. Sure, their worries and problems can be a tad surface level, and sometimes they act a little more goofy than normal, but for me, that makes them more human and relatable. As you open side quests and basically go on dates, you grow closer to them, cheering them on as they try to accomplish their dreams. Personally, Tsubasa is my favorite of the bunch. Her goofy yet determined personality makes her easy to fall in love with. Seeing her flustered cracks me up every time, and she surprisingly shows a lot more growth as a person. On the other hand, the player character Itsuki is about as boring as having a virtual meeting over Zoom. How he gets all these girls to fall in love with him is beyond me. Maybe I should be taking some notes.
そうだよ。ほら、翼ってスタイルもいいし。
Write that down, write that down! The combat is also endearing with its unique take on turn-based combat. I won't go into too much detail, but the key is to strike an enemy's weakness, activating combo chains called session attacks, which allows the party to hit the enemy over and over again. These combo attacks are mildly exciting at first, but by the end, you'll be stacking 12 or 13 attacks per turn, making quick work of enemies if you play your cards right. On top of this, characters can unlock duo attacks or ad-lib performances to add cute and cool flair to attacks, thus allowing for combats to stack even more. Be warned, these attacks are random, so you can't count on them activating at all times. But sweet Tiki is in a rush when a duo attack activates during a last-ditch effort. Plus, some of the best songs in the game playing during these special attacks. Give me Moto Kuni, give me Moto Kuni, give me... Oh no, what have I become? Combat can get tedious further down the line, a typical curse for JRPGs, and a feature I don't particularly enjoy. However, I don't blame the combat system per se, rather I blame the level design. Level design is Tokyo Mirage Sessions' glaring weakness. While some of the dungeons are a joy to look at, the straight corridors and flat surfaces become stale after a while for even the most creative areas. You can sometimes get lost in the repetitiveness of the dungeon, since the patterns and colors tend to repeat. What makes it worse is the excessive backtracking forced on you during the latter half of the story. I'm not just talking about returning to previous areas for side quests. No, the story forces you to re-explore each dungeon to progress the plot. It's during these moments you can tell the budget for this project didn't have much room for creative level design. Despite that glaring flaw, I still enjoy the battles, cast, and writing, and I believe the game as a whole deserves more credit than it currently gets. I even grew to like the J-pop idol premise behind it all.
One of us.
Oh no.
One of us.
Not like
One
you!
of us.
That's
One of
impossible!
us.
It would be a shame if Atlas never returned with a sequel, especially if they fixed the dungeon design. Perhaps they could cross with other franchises like Zelda, Kid Icarus, Pokemon, or even Mario. That'll give you some nightmare fuel. It's me, Mario-chan! Or just return with more Fire Emblem. Either way, I hope they don't let this creative concept die out after one game. If you've ever wanted an accurate inside look at the ongoings of the Japanese idol industry, you're gonna want to look elsewhere. But if you want a light-hearted take on the minor ups and downs of idol culture with entertaining turn-based combat, look no further than Tokyo Mirage Sessions Chop FW Encore. Arguably Nintendo's most predictable announcement this year, no new updates for Breath of the Wild 2, was followed by its most unpredictable reveal. A prequel to Breath of the Wild. What? Where did this come from? I'm a simple man. I see Zelda, and I get really excited. Because of that, it's probably a no-brainer that Age of Calamity ended up in my top 3 for 2020. But this isn't your typical Zelda game. It's a button-mashing, combo-performing, hack-and-slash Musou prequel crossover far removed from the action-adventure of Breath of the Wild. The Zelda/Musou concept worked with the original Hyrule Warriors, and I enjoyed my time for the most part. But it wasn't a Game of the Year contender, you know what I mean? Surely Age of Calamity would fall into the same shortcomings as its predecessor. Yet, here I am praising the game as an excellent prequel and one of the best games I played this year. Age of Calamity answers the burning question of what happened 100 years before the events of Breath of the Wild, effectively acting as a prequel to the original masterpiece. You meet and play as characters in Age of Calamity you can only remember as you regained your memories in Breath of the Wild, all while working towards trying to stop the impending return of Calamity Ganon. I won't go into spoilers from here, but the story itself fills in a lot of details and character exposition that was lacking in Breath of the Wild. The prequel successfully made me care about the champions and their quest to save Hyrule, even if it does get a little confusing from a lore perspective. I'll just say, if you played Breath of the Wild before, you might be surprised by what you find in this prequel. Age of Calamity perfectly honors its source material by creating a Hyrule pre-return of Calamity Ganon. Cities and landmarks are in perfect condition, before the forces of Calamity Ganon attack at least, giving the player their first look at Hyrule in its prime. How I've dreamed for this moment! Granted, I still want to explore it in the Breath of the Wild style of gameplay, but roaming the streets of Hyrule's Castle Town or the Akala Citadel in this prequel is a sight to behold. That's also a testament to the prequel's flawless and consistent art direction with the main game. It's like playing an expansion pass to Breath of the Wild, only with completely new gameplay. Even the overworld map is heavily inspired by the map from the main game, borrowing visual cues and sounds. It speaks to the development team's eye for detail when creating this crossover, to the point where I don't consider it a crossover so much as an extension of the Breath of the Wild lore and world. Of course, don't expect to roam freely across Hyrule, climbing anything within sight. Instead, you'll be battling hundreds of bokoblins, moblins, Lizalfos, and all sorts of variations in 1 versus 1,000 death matches, fitting for a war over the fate of Hyrule. Combat is fairly typical warrior Musou affair, string together a combo of weak and strong attacks as you take down enemy strongholds or protect your own strongholds from enemy advancements. However, it's the added Breath of the Wild flair and the unique fighting style for each character that'll make your inner fan squeal in delight. It's impressive how seamless the combos can be performed, matching the personalities and characteristics of the various fighters. Hands down, my 2 non-spoilery favorite characters were Impa and Mipha. Oh wow, what a simp. I cannot deny what I truly am. Although I wasn't really a Mipha fan before Age of Calamity. Her quick movements and elegant use of geysers are so satisfying to pull off that she quickly became a favorite. Impa, on the other hand, I fell in love with on sight. To be fair, I've always had a soft spot for her granddaughter, Paya, which now that I've said that out loud, it sounds really creepy. So it makes sense that a young Impa based on Paya's design would win my heart. But Impa is much more than a cute face. Her Sheikah ninja skills are a sight to behold, utilizing a shadow clone jutsu straight out of the Hidden Leaf Village. Her combos might be limited when you first meet her, but as you progress through the story, you'll unlock new abilities that greatly improve her ninja skills. Speaking of progression, the side quests that dot the map add a lot more depth to both gameplay and immersion, ranging from simple fetch quests to a dance competition. Some even give insight into the cast's backstory and personality. Perhaps insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but I appreciate the added expansion to the lore of this world and characters, even if it is just through text. The side quests themselves are fun to clear, allowing you to train using characters you wouldn't normally choose in the main game. They add a lot more playtime to your adventure, but not to the point where it feels like pointless filler, which is how I felt in previous Musou crossovers. Although, it's easy to get a tad bit overwhelmed when you return to the map after finishing a chapter. Awesome, new quests! Nice. Wow, that's a lot. You can stop now. No more. Please, I beg you! Stop regurgitating icons all over my beautiful map! Oh, thank you. Technically speaking, Age of Calamity does run into some issues. Nothing game-breaking, or what I like to call cyberpunking, but the frame rates do drop at times, especially in heavy congested areas. That said, it never took too much out of my enjoyment, and it might even run better than Breath of the Wild at times. If you are a fan of Breath of the Wild, I implore you to play Age of Calamity, even if you're not a big Warriors Musou fan. Trust me, the world building and Breath of the Wild fan service in this spin-off prequel is worth the time. If you haven't played the original, you might not be able to appreciate some of the subtle comparisons to the source material. However, I'm positive Age of Calamity is a strong enough game in its own right to be considered entertaining for everyone.
Time for the main event.
I don't enjoy roguelike games. I genuinely don't find dying over and over and over again, only to be sent back to the beginning each time with little to no progression saved, fun. I just don't find that fun. Where's the joy in this masochistic action that brings nothing but pain and suffering unless you persevere through every randomly generated level and master the gameplay to an art? So it's no surprise that Hades, a roguelike game, is my number 2 game of the year. Wait, you kinda lost me there. To someone like me who usually avoids the roguelike genre, I had no intentions of playing a game centered on repeating a cycle of death and misery. I know what kinds of games I enjoy, and games like Hades usually ain't my cup of nectar. But as the weeks passed, I could not escape the constant tweets, videos, and discussions raving about the Switch console exclusive, imploring all to at least try the potential Game of the Year candidate. It's like they all signed up for a fad workout class and wouldn't shut up about it until everyone on Earth knew the benefits of said fad. Trust me, walking on your elbows is so much better for your back. The peer pressure eventually got to me, as it seems to with a lot of games, and I found myself downloading my Gateway to Hell. I can see why people wouldn't shut up about it. Hades is absolutely one of the best games I played this year. But how could this be? How could I enjoy repeatedly dying to enemy after enemy, boss after boss, never reaching the end? What prompted this change of heart? It all boils down to execution and providing a narrative reason for the repeating death cycle. Hades excels at just that. Granted, I don't think this concept is necessarily new for the genre, but Hades' masterful execution of the cycle leads to less banging my head in frustration and more enjoying the moment and the deaths along the way. Hades takes place in the Greek underworld of, well, Hades, named after the god who oversees its jurisdiction, where Zagreus, the son of Hades himself, attempts to escape from the underworld, overcoming the many chambers and biomes that are meant to keep souls from escaping their eternal slumber. The gods of Mount Olympus, aware of Zagreus' plight, decide to aid the prince as he tries to escape from his father's domain. This is basically the starting context for your journey. But as you restart your run each time, because you will die a lot, you unravel more of the narrative. I adore this slow-paced storytelling when done correctly, allowing the player to discover the world the closer they get to the surface. Peeling back the layers of the narrative rewards the player for nearly every run they try to complete. Dialogue usually never repeats, meaning you find new information with almost every character in the underworld during your run. It's a small but brilliant addition that helps the roguelike avoid the typical routine staleness associated with the genre. The cast of Greek gods, heroes, and mythical creatures are surprisingly charming and endearing, opening up little by little the more you talk to them. I kinda have a soft spot for Greek mythology since I used to love reading books about the subject back in middle school. So seeing a video game impressively bring to life the Greek lore excites my chubby, dorky middle school self. It also doesn't hurt to have a less impressive depiction of Greek mythology released in the same year. Yikes. The combat itself is well executed and fun in its own right. Some of the best hack and slash combat I've played, although to be fair, I don't play a lot. But if a poor excuse for a gamer like me can enjoy the onslaught of enemies pouring through each chamber, you know the developer's Supergiant did something right. As you progress through each chamber, you collect rewards that can power up Zagreus and his current weapon of choice, giving him a better chance of escaping the underworld. For the first 20 or so runs, you'll explore these power-ups, finding the boons that match your playstyle. Personally, I enjoy boons from Ares, Artemis, and Athena, at least when the RNG went my way. Alas, no matter how strong your weapon or power-ups may become, you will eventually hit a wall, whether at the hands of a punishing boss or some measly small fry that got lucky. Admittedly, dying over and over again is still frustrating, especially having to hear Hypno's annoying, patronizing voice every time. I swear, if we weren't already in the House of Hades, I'd kill you. But dying becomes a learning point as you keep some items you find during your escape attempt. The currency Darkness is especially important to strengthening Zagreus permanently, stacking stats and providing some helpful skills to survive his journey. Tip: if you suck at video games like me, make sure you get Death Defiance. It's a lifesaver, literally. By the time you reach the surface, you should get through the final boss with relative ease, or barely escape by the skin of your teeth. I am ashamed to say that it took me 27 runs to finally reach the surface, but no doubt, it was a highlight of my gaming lifetime. Loved it. Although, don't expect the credits to roll once you escape. I found that out the hard way. The replayability in Hades is incredible. There are hours upon hours of gameplay to find here, even after you escape the underworld. I technically haven't reached the credits yet, but as soon as I'm done with this video, you can bet I'm going back. Yeah, sure, whatever. Doesn't have waifus, so I'm not interested. Doesn't have waifus? Doesn't have waifus? Do you not realize that Hades is secretly a dating sim? I mean, you got all the tropes right here. The tsundere, the tomboy, the yandere, and the cinnamon bun, aka secret best girl in all of Hades. Seriously, I will protect this precious floating head with my life.
Just doing my job here, Prince.
Why does she always run away? Even if you're not a fan of the roguelike genre, I highly recommend you pick up Hades. Definitely one of the best games I played this year, and one that I can go back to again and again and again. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. While there were a handful of contenders for Game of the Year, only one game was able to come out on top, perfectly encapsulating the essence of 2020. My 2020 Nintendo Switch Game of the Year is... That's cute, but no. Maybe if this was 1990 or 1991, maybe. My real Game of the Year is...
It's the power of the Mirage.
No, we already did that one. Did you not hear my explanation? Pay attention. My real Game of the Year that perfectly encapsulates the year 2020 is... To be fair, Jump Rope Challenge does summarize 2020 well, but think. What huge Nintendo game released earlier this year, right as the pandemic first hit? So close, and yet so far away. Nintendo. Game. Think about it. Vacation Island Getaway, cute animal neighbors, paying off your debts. Ring a bell? Ready? Go! This is the last time I'm working with myself.
Explore, create, and customize your island paradise.
The latest entry in the Animal Crossing series, New Horizons entered the playing field during the start of a rather stressful year for many. It was the perfect storm, really. A relaxing game about getting away from your home and exploring a new island getaway. Since we were stuck indoors, what better way to escape our comfy hell than with a virtual paradise? Oddly enough, I had never played an Animal Crossing game before New Horizons. I just didn't see the appeal of living a chibi life doing boring chores with adorable animals, checking daily for weeds. But with the hype swarming from the fanbase and the sudden increase in free time thanks to COVID-19, New Horizons looked appealing, and I optimistically jumped in. Now I clearly see why people adore the series. In hindsight, it's exactly as I described, living your chibi life doing boring chores with adorable animals. The amazing thing is, you find yourself immersed in these simple tasks that before you know it, hours have passed. Dawn turns to dusk, villagers go to sleep, and Timmy and Tommy close their store for the night. Wake up, you little cheapskates, you owe me money! You start off your new life completely from scratch on an uninhabited island, which sounds like a sketchy deal to get involved with in the first place, but if the Tanuki people say it's fine, then I'm sure there's nothing to worry about. As you collect resources scattered across the island, making friends with the two animals trapped on the island with you, you start to cultivate your own community, complete with homes, shops, and even a museum. Eventually, your island will be brimming with charismatic and sometimes chaotic villagers who you'll either learn to love or despise. Look, it's clear there are favorites among the Animal Crossing fanbase, but no matter which villagers you love or hate, you cannot deny their charming personalities. It's a treat just to see or hear what they'll do next. Honestly, that's a big reason why I love New Horizons so much. After a month or so, the vacant island turns into a modest scenic getaway. And then you unlock terraforming, overhauling your island completely in order to build an island utopia from scratch. And that's when the game really begins. From what I understand, the basic premise is not new to the series, aside from running in HD. However, it's the ability to drastically furnish the island to your liking that makes the newest entry stand out. Together with little quality of life improvements, New Horizons is the best way to dive into the Animal Crossing series. I mean, hey, it's how I started. But, and that is a big but, it is still frustratingly behind the times with its UI and controls. First off, the mountain of dialogue you'll run across in New Horizons might bore you to death at times. Take the dodos, for example. In what could be such a simple point-and-choose situation, Orville takes you through wall text after wall text of pointless information you've heard 100 times before. Just get to the point, Orville! I know part of the charm of Animal Crossing is the diverse personalities of the animals, but we don't need to see it for basic menu access, like flying to an island or opening your island to guests. Second, the controls in New Horizons are so tedious. I know it's not exactly realistic to have items automatically move to your storage when your pockets are full, or crafting multiple items at once, but I'm married to my goth cat girlfriend. Realism was thrown out the window months ago. But all of my complaints and annoyances fail in comparison to New Horizons' biggest flaw: online. How does it take 2 to 5 minutes to have one single visitor on my island, whereas it only takes 10 seconds to join a party of hunters to take down the rainbow bubble fox dragon? Surely my friend's island isn't more graphically intense than fighting a giant monster. To be fair, I am not a developer. Perhaps there is much more going on behind the scenes in Animal Crossing. Yet, I can't help but compare it to other online games that operate much smoother. Maybe it has something to do with everyone's island being completely different, but does it really require the waiting screen of death? Perhaps crappy online is just part of the Nintendo seal of approval. Then again, Smash and Mario Kart Online are not that bad. They are different games, so I guess it's hard for me to compare. Still, Animal Crossing Online leaves a lot to be desired in terms of load times and connectivity. At this point, you're probably wondering how New Horizons could possibly be my #1 game, especially after tearing apart the online.
Actually, I was wondering how much longer this video would be.
Well, I'll tell you why. Despite being an imperfect and technically challenged product, New Horizons is still the perfect 2020 game. With traveling outside being nearly impossible, I spent hours building my island paradise, nurturing a special bond with my neighbors, welcoming people to NintenCity Island, and visiting my friends online. Even with all the frustrating hiccups, I kept coming back day after day, excited to improve my pandemic-free paradise. As I said, this was my first time playing Animal Crossing. The novelty of the gameplay might be lost on longtime fans, but for someone who had never started a chibi life with animal neighbors and a tanuki landlord, every day was exciting and new. This is why Animal Crossing New Horizons is my 2020 Game of the Year.
Don't lie, you don't play it anymore. You haven't turned it on in months.
Why are you gonna throw me under the bus like that, huh? I moved on to other games, yes, I can't help it. I don't like switching between games.
Oh yeah, great excuse.
And those are my top 6 Nintendo games of 2020. Probably not surprising that Animal Crossing took the top spot, but the rest of the games I played this year truly did surprise me with how much fun I had with each. From genres I don't particularly enjoy to ports I missed out on. Granted, this isn't my favorite year for the Switch, and nowhere near the strongest, but the little surprises kept me going. With the world still struggling with the pandemic, who knows what 2021 will hold for Nintendo? We already know of a fairly strong beginning of the year to look forward to, but what else does Nintendo have up their sleeves? Breath of the Wild 2, a new Switch model, some strange device we strap on our wrist? Nothing! Please no. I think it's best to keep our expectations low, but I can't help being a little optimistic. For now, I'll just enjoy the little surprises along the way. Thank you so much for watching, and happy belated New Year! Sorry for taking so long with this video, it's been a stressful few weeks. But I'm happy I was able to finish the video at least before the end of January. That's nice. And now it's the time to focus on 2021. Get ready for some big changes to the channel. I can't go into detail now, but I'm sure you'll be excited. Although, there's one thing I can tease for you right now. Wow.